America, we got to get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. Hey, get out there and vote today. If it is election day where you are, if you live somewhere in this country and there are elections going on, baby, make sure your voice is heard. Get out there and vote. It's one of the greatest two powers you have as a free citizen in this country, the power to vote and the power to engage in civil disobedience. Don't waste that power. Get out there and vote today. It is election day. If you live in Virginia, New Jersey, New York City, get out there and vote. Big elections going on today in those states and in that largest American city. We will talk about the results tomorrow. But I want to focus here today on one other topic that's come up in the last few days. And this is all I want to talk about today. And bear with me if you are of a political persuasion or a political philosophy that doesn't really have a dog in this fight. It matters. It matters to all of us. You've heard me say this before. We've got two major political parties in this country, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. Now, I wish we had more than two. I've been advocating for years that we should have more than two. I've been advocating for years that this two-party duopoly that's like carried the day for 170 some years needs to go the way of the dinosaurs, but we're stuck with these two political parties for right now. And my former political party, the Republican Party, is now the MAGA party, is now the party of Trumpism. It's a MAGA party. And that ain't changing, I've said, and I don't think it's changing in my lifetime. Those of you listening to me right now who long for, pine for the days of Mitt Romney and Nikki Haley and John McCain and all the good, responsible Republicans, that party ain't coming back, I don't think, in my lifetime. What was fringe, MAGA, which was fringe at one time, gosh, when I publicly came out against Trump 7.5 years ago, MAGA was fringe. MAGA ain't fringe anymore. MAGA is mainstream Republican. And the most animating force in MAGA, we've talked about it before, is Christian nationalism. Now, there's a fight brewing right now, supposedly on the right, among competing factions in this big MAGA coalition. You've heard of this guy, Nick Fuentes. He's a white supremacist. He is a Nazi. He'll call himself a Nazi. He's a griper. He's a white nationalist, a white supremacist, hates Jews, hates blacks, He's a white supremacist, Nick Fuentes. Tucker Carlson had Nick Fuentes on his show last week, and Tucker Carlson just sat there and washed his feet and rubbed his brow and just gave this white supremacist, this Nazi, this self-proclaimed Nazi, this Hitler-loving Nazi. Nick Fuentes loves Hitler. Tucker Carlson had him on his show last week and gave him his audience, gave him a platform. Did not push back, did not disagree, did not just said, here, young Hitler-loving white supremacist, mi casa, su casa, my show is yours. And this created quite a stir among folks on the right. and a few conservative voices on the right away began to condemn Nick Fuentes, this groyper, this neo-Nazi, this white supremacist. And a few conservative voices out there began to condemn Tucker Carlson for giving Nick Fuentes a platform. And then the president of the Heritage Foundation, which has utterly evolved into a Trumpian nationalistic organization, who's friends with Tucker Carlson, Kevin Roberts, and advertises on Tucker Carlson's show. He came out and just in a ham-handed way tried to defend Fuentes and Tucker Carlson, their friends, and then Kevin Roberts and the Heritage Foundation got jumped on by people on the right, conservative talkers and thinkers, because Kevin Roberts didn't condemn this anti-Semite, this white supremacist Nick Fuentes. It's like, and Megyn Kelly did this a couple weeks ago. She defended Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are anti-Semites on the right. Megyn Kelly is on the right. And Megyn Kelly a couple weeks ago said, pretty much said, I will only condemn anti-Semites on the left. My job is to go after the left. I'm not going to go after white supremacists and anti-Semites on the right because I'm on the right. My audience is of the right and I can't lose my audience. That's what Megyn Kelly said a couple weeks ago. And what happened on Tucker Carlson's show last week put this public spat between these disparate characters on the right, put it out there for everybody to watch. And an amazing thing is now happening. We're seeing Trump supporting conservative voices in the media openly condemn now Nick Fuentes and even Tucker Carlson. Not all, some. Ben Shapiro on his show yesterday came out and delivered an unbelievably strong rebuke, condemnation of the Nick Fuentes of the world and the Tucker Carlsons of the world that give the Nick Fuentes of the world a platform. Ben Shapiro yesterday came out firm against the groypers and the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists and the anti-Semites and the racists and the bigots and the fascists and the anti-American pro-Putin voices on the right. It was odd. Here's a bit of what Shapiro said yesterday.
My answer is no. No to the groypers. No to their publicists like Tucker Carlson. No to those who champion them. No to demoralization. No to bigotry and anti-meritocratic horse shit. No to anti-Americanism. No. This is our country. This is our party. And this is our conservative movement. And I will not stand by while it is handed over to those who betray the most fundamental principles I have spent my entire life defending and advocating. That is a path to defeat and a path to moral oblivion. I reject it because if we lose the right, we will lose to the left. And either way, we'll lose the country.
You know, good on Shapiro for saying that, but, and there's a big, big but, because there's a bunch of problems with what Ben Shapiro said yesterday. And there are a bunch of problems with the Ben Shapiros of the world and so many of these other leading voices on the right coming out now against the white supremacists and the anti-Semites and the white Christian nationalists coming out now. There's big big, big problem with all of this. And my first reaction when I listened to Ben Shapiro yesterday was, okay, thank you, Ben, for saying what you said. But if you're going to want to kick Nick Fuentes out of the MAGA tent now, well, then you got to kick Donald Trump out of the MAGA tent. And Ben Shapiro will never do that. See, the problem is Trump. Trump is the problem. See, the problem is, and again, I come from the right. I come from the MAGA tent. I left. But here's their problem. Here's the problem that Ben Shapiro has, and Sean Hannity has, and Laura Ingraham has, and Mark Levin has, and Glenn Beck has. Here's the problem that Trump has, that Trump and all of his media cheerleaders, of which Ben Shapiro is one, here's the problem, the big, big problem that they all have right now. They all let these people in the tent when it was expedient to do so. They all let the groypers in the MAGA tent to win. They all let the white supremacists and the anti-Semites and the racists and the bigots and the xenophobes and the fascists and the pro-Putin lovers and the Christian nationalists, they all, Ben Shapiro, all of them, all of the media cheerleaders, and Trump, to win, they all let these people into the MAGA tent. And now they want to kick them out? Where you been? In fact, Trump has been a magnet for these people. There's no more dishonest, there's no more cruel, there's no more ignorant person on the planet than Donald Trump. And when MAGA formed, man, these people, the white supremacists on the right, the neo-Nazis on the right, the white nationalists on the right, the bigots, the transgender haters, the xenophobes, the we hate brown and black people folks, Trump gave them permission. When Trump came on the scene, he gave these people permission to come out from under their rocks. He welcomed them. Trump did. Didn't matter who you were. My God, Donald Trump 3 years ago, had dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Nick Fuentes, with white supremacist, Hitler-loving Nick Fuentes. Donald Trump had dinner with him at Mar-a-Lago 3 years ago. And I don't remember Trump's media cheerleaders then saying there's no room for Fuentes, no room for Trump. That's wrong. You can't do that. No, they made excuses for Trump back then. See, Trump's the problem. But Ben Shapiro, he can never say that. For business reasons, He can never say that. If Ben Shapiro, who delivered a forceful, persuasive argument yesterday, let's keep Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson and all these white supremacists and bigots on the right. We got to keep them out of the MAGA tent. They're not part of my America. We need to keep them out if we want to win. Shapiro was persuasive, very, yesterday when he said that. But he would never say, he would never have said Trump's the problem. Trump allowed this. Trump welcomed them. Trump didn't give a damn what your beliefs were to come get your ticket and come into the MAGA tent. We've always, those of us on the right, we've always known these elements are there. I can go back to my Tea Party days. I still believe the Tea Party, the vast majority of the Tea Party was motivated by, fiscal responsibility and were bankrupting future generations. In the main, it was about the debt, but these uglier elements were there. But they were off to the corner. They were under the rocks, their rocks. Trump's election in 2016 brought them out. And Trump let them in. This is so important to say. Trump didn't give a fuck. Trump let the white supremacists into the MAGA tent. He let the anti-Semites on the right into the MAGA tent. He let the pro-Putin, pro-authoritarian voices into the MAGA tent on the right. He let the openly proud fascist voices into the MAGA tent on the right. And Trump's media cheerleaders and public sycophants chimed right in. Again, from Ben Shapiro, the long list of them. When the Groypers and the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists and the anti-Semites and the bigots and the people saying transgender Americans shouldn't even have a right to live, when all of these people began entering the MAGA tent, the Ben Shapiros of the world, for business reasons, either looked the other way or nuzzled up to them and gave them a bit of a platform. Some gave them a bigger platform than others. Candace Owens, right? Anti-Semitic nutbag on the right. Candace Owens worked for Ben Shapiro for years. They came out from under their rocks. Trump and his enablers welcomed them. And now, all of a sudden now, these leading voices on the right, these conservatives, want to kick them out of the MAGA tent. It's like you created this monster to win, man. You had to have a big old ugly motley coalition, the MAGA coalition. And I say this as someone who comes from the MAGA coalition. It was a coalition that included white supremacists, Hitler-loving racists, Jew-hating racists to just good, decent conservatives and everything in between. And Trump and Ben Shapiro and too many of Trump's media cheerleaders just took them all in because it was expedient to do so, because you had elections to win and shows to keep going and audiences to grow and voters to attract. So, man, we want the Groyper vote. So, of course, we'll look the other way when it comes to Nick Fuentes. We want all those people out there who love Tucker Carlson. So, of course, we'll fucking look the other way when he goes to Moscow and sucks on Putin's toes and pays homage to Vladimir Putin. Because we got to win. Trump's got to win in 24. So we need all the people we can get, no matter who they are. You let him in. You let him into the tent. You turned the other way. You gave him a platform because it helped you. And now you're going to stand up in the public square and now you're going to say, white supremacists, we don't want you? When just a couple years ago, we needed you? And now you're surprised that they've gained in strength. And now you're surprised that especially a lot of young men out there relate to a lot of this anti-Semitic, racist, white nationalist bullshit. Turning Point USA, again, there's a whisker in this MAGA coalition. The folks at TPUSA are separated from the Groypers and the Hitler-loving neo-Nazis by a whisker. They all promoted everybody in the coalition. They all created this Frankenstein because now these people, these white supremacists and bigots and fascists and pro-Putin, anti-American voices. I mean, think about it. They've grown in strength, right? They're flexing their muscles now in MAGA. You know, Ben Shapiro, everybody's saying, no, we can't have them in the tent. Well, now they're too damn strong. You've allowed them to grow. That's problem number one. You created this Frankenstein, and all of the respectable, and again, I consider Ben Shapiro to be a respectable conservative voice. I've always respected Ben Shapiro. For business and professional reasons, he's chosen to ignore certain elements in the MAGA coalition. For business and personal and professional reasons, he's chosen to ignore how bad Trump is. And Ben Shapiro will never say that Trump is the problem because Ben Shapiro would lose his audience. It's not complicated. I come from that world. It's why none of them will. Glenn Beck and all the rest, man. They know what butters their bread, man. But it's almost too late because they've allowed these extreme voices to gain in strength. And for Ben Shapiro yesterday to say that you're anti-Semitic and or you are anti-American and you support authoritarianism and all the rest. We don't want you. You're not part. You cannot. You're not. That's not the America I'm going to live in. We can't have that on the right. The biggest pro-Putin voice in the country is Donald Trump. Ben Shapiro will never criticize him. Make America great again. The biggest The biggest voice out there for years who thinks America is a piece of shit is Donald Trump. Ben Shapiro will never say that about Trump. That's problem number one. Trump is the problem, not Nick Fuentes, not Tucker Carlson. Donald Trump gave these people the opportunity to come out from under their rock and preach their hatred and their cruelty for years. Trump gave them that opportunity. He never condemned them for preaching their bigoted, racist hate and cruelty. In fact, often he encouraged it. He'd sit with them. He'd have dinner with them. He'd echo what they said. You kick Fuentes out of MAGA, you got to kick Trump out. You kick Nick Fuentes out of MAGA. Because why? Because he's too bigoted, he's too hateful, he's too cruel, he's too un-American? Huh? He's not as hateful, he's not as cruel, he's not as bigoted, he's not as un-American as Donald Trump is. We've always known it was there. But the responsible conservative voices who could have called out the racist haters on the right, the anti-Semites on the right a few years ago when they had that opportunity and chose not to, because they wanted to stay in Trump's court and they wanted to keep their show on Fox and they wanted their podcast to be doing great. And they wanted to get reelected. Let's not let all the Republican Party officials out there now, and a bunch of them now, right, ever since this broke last week, condemning Nick Fuentes. You've got Republican senators and members of Congress. There's no place in the Republican Party for anti-Semitism, for white supremacy. They're saying now, these Republican senators and members of Congress, when just like Hannity and just like Glenn Beck, they look the other way. Folks like Lindsey Graham did. They look the other way. Folks like Mike Johnson did when the white supremacist and the neo-Nazis and the anarchist and the pro-Putin voices all came into the MAGA tent. Mike Johnson, Lindsey Graham, all the others, they look the other way. Because why? Because we got to win. And my God, I got to get reelected. I don't want a primary challenge. I got to appeal to the base. Because my base is of MAGA. And my base doesn't have a problem with Tucker Carlson. Doesn't have a problem with white nationalism. So I got to throw them some bones or just look the other way. Can't oppose it because I got to get reelected. Same thing. That's problem number one. Here's problem number two. There's not a big difference between Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk, who was horribly assassinated a couple months ago. What I mean by that is Nick Fuentes is a white supremacist. Nick Fuentes is a Christian nationalist. Nick Fuentes is a white nationalist. Charlie Kirk was a Christian nationalist. There's not a big difference between a Christian nationalist and a white supremacist. In fact, there's a lot of overlap there. I mean, it's easy to condemn Nick Fuentes because he says how much he loves Hitler. Charlie Kirk never did that. Charlie Kirk believes America should be a white, formerly he believed America should be a white, designated a white Christian country. That's not wholly different from what Tucker Carlson or Nick Fuentes or any of these Hitler-loving young neo-Nazi youth in America would say. It's all part of the same coalition. It's a matter of degree. But not one Republican, if Charlie Kirk were still alive, not one Republican would condemn Charlie Kirk, but they'll condemn Nick Fuentes. They won't condemn a Christian nationalist, someone like Charlie. And Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, is a Christian nationalist. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, believes America should be formally designated as a Christian nation. Now, that is antithetical to what America is, but Mike Johnson's been very public about it. Charlie Kirk was public about it. J.D. Vance is public about it. The point I'm making, the problem is that's not terribly different from what a Nick Fuentes advocates for. I mean, what are groypers? Groypers are the people who follow Nick Fuentes. It's a bunch of Christian nationalists and white nationalists. Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk, may not have liked each other personally. What the point I'm making is the difference between those two beliefs at best is a whisker. And see, that's the big problem for MAGA. And again, Ben Shapiro will never speak to that. Christian nationalism right now is the strongest animating force in the Republican Party. And there are ugly, 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 radical elements of it, like Nick Fuentes. But again, big old tent. Mike Johnson's a Christian nationalist. There are plenty of members of Congress, Republicans, who've publicly voiced Christian nationalism. They're part of the same tent. And Ben Shapiro and other Christian thinkers and talkers will not condemn Charlie Kirk or any other Christian nationalist. And it may well overtake MAGA. The whole thing makes me sad in this regard, and I'll close here. This is analogous to Trump becoming a thing and then the rise of Trump. All of us during these 10 years who've considered ourselves to be Republicans, conservatives, all of us in this arena have had a singular career decision to make. Once Trump came on the scene, and once Trump became what he was, and once we all of us could see in a nanosecond what Trump was, all of it. And once we saw what the MAGA coalition was, a coalition ranging from good, decent conservatives, independents, to groypers and neo-Nazis and white supremacists and anti-Semites and racists and bigots and fascists and pro-Putin voices and anti-American voices and Christian nationalists and everything in between. Once we all, those of us who are conservative and Republican in the age of Trump, once we saw what Trump was, what he was doing, what the MAGA coalition was made of, all of us had a singular career decision to make. Do we say what we believe, hold on to our conservative principles, or do we sell out what we believe, put those principles on a shelf, and get on the Trump train? All of us these past 10 years have had to make that decision. Do we call out the white supremacist in the movement, or do we keep our mouths shut? Do we call out the pro-Putin voices? Do we call out the Christian nationalists? Or do we look the other way? All of us, these past 10 years, who've been leading conservative Republican voices, we've all had to make this decision. Do we adhere to our principles, or do we shelve those principles and get on the Trump train? And the vast majority of us chose to sell out our principles and get on the Trump train. Because that's where the money was, that's where the ratings were, that's where the audience was, that's where you got to go to get reelected and keep your office in Congress. Some of us chose to hang on to our principles and stand in the public square and call out and oppose Trump, and call out and oppose white nationalists, and call out and oppose the racist and the pro-Putin voices and the anti-American voices and the fascist and the white supremacists, knowing that every time we did that, we were losing any semblance of a following on the right. We've all known these elements have been there. We all saw these ugly anti-Semitic racist elements come out from under their rocks with the rise of Trump. But way too many of us conservative voices kept our mouths shut and looked the other way for professional reasons. And now, all these years later, you're going to call them out? It's too late. It's too late. These voices that you've enabled, these anti-Semitic voices, these white supremacist voices, these Christian nationalist voices, they're too big now. They're too strong. They're too major a part of the MAGA coalition now because you kept your mouths shut. Respectfully, Ben Shapiro and Hannity and all you others. And all you got to do as I close is watch. They'll call out Nick Fuentes, and some will call out Tucker Carlson, but they won't call out the leading Christian nationalist voices. They won't call out Charlie Kirk. They won't call out all the other major Christian nationalist voices out there in Congress or just out there in the media world when they're every bit the threat to this country that Nick Fuentes is. Thank you for letting me get all that off of my chest. My Substack, Social Contract with Joe Walsh at .substack.com. Subscribe. Oh, I went way too long, Keith. Damn. Subscribe to my Substack. Great way to help me keep my voice out there. Really appreciate it. If you want to send me an email, send me an email. The Social Contract with Joe Walsh at gmail.com. All one word. The Social Contract with Joe Walsh at gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Be brave.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been The Social Contract with Joe Walsh.